Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So today we're going to discuss a few of the news articles we've been reading. So the government just come out and they have said that you need to make sure that you are not using these DNA test sites, which look for like your ancestry and things like that. Now, we're not discussing about if you have a medical condition, they need to check DNA. We're talking about these things where they come in and say, hey, do this mouth swaps in DNA and all this mess in. Well, apparently they actually are having a lot of warnings about there are bioweapons that can be developed to attack certain class of people based off of their DNA structure, based off of the information that's in the DNA. You know, people will go around and they will protect their social security cards, stuff like that, but they seem free about just giving their DNA out there. That's, in my opinion, is one of the things you need to protect the most. So here's the article on that, guys. I thought it was interesting. I know back when they first started doing this kind of stuff, I think it was CRISPR or whatever had come out, and they wanted to get DNA so they could unlock the DNA genetic codes and all that stuff. Then we started seeing these different type of ancestry type sites that were coming up where they could test your DNA and see what your background is and stuff. And it sounded kind of interesting, but there were a lot of people, and I was one of them, I'm not going to lie, where we were looking at it from an aspect of I'm not going to send my DNA in because bioweapons could be basically designed to attack a certain type of DNA structure, which would be a certain class of people, I guess you could say. So that's one of the things that there was a lot of concern about now, and now they're telling people don't do this. So pretty interesting. Now there's some other stuff going on in the news right now. So apparently Russia and Iran are striking some kind of deal to back the ruble with gold. Now what is that going to do to the US dollar? Man, your guess is as good as mine on that. I know that our economy is really struggling right now. The value of the U.S. dollar, they're expecting it to actually be about 50% less than what it is now. So that's insane. We're already seeing those inflation costs and stuff. We're seeing them come up on interest rates and stuff. So a lot of people are out there saying now's the time to buy. Now is not the time to buy. Now, if you're going to go buy a house or something and you can pay it straight off, then yeah, definitely the time to buy. But if you're looking at getting a decent interest rate, now is not the time to buy, because a lot of these people that were buying homes during the pandemics can no longer pay for their house because the interest rate from the Federal Reserves have gone up so much, which is raising their payments and stuff now. So don't pay attention to what a lot of these people that are paid money for selling you a house. Now it's time to buy. Now you got to strike while the iron's hot, because if you look at what's happening in society, we're looking at the devaluation of our dollar. This mess that's happening between Russia and Iran is going to drive that down even further. As far as what are we seeing, wheat and things like that, the prices going up, the shortages that are happening. I thought it was pretty interesting. Just a few days ago, we seen where Russia and Ukraine had struck kind of a peace agreement type of a deal to open up a port to allow for the wheat and stuff to start exporting into the world. So what happened is they backed off. Ukraine started bringing the materials in, getting that ready for shipment, and then Russia came in and they hit it with white phosphorus and just burned it all out. So that's something you need to look at. You cannot trust what Putin is saying. This guy is lying through his teeth on stuff. Understand, they're not too worried about what's happening with Ukraine. They're using this as an excuse to further destabilize the country, our country, and the countries around the world. One of the things that's going to bring people to the table for bargaining and what they want is to make sure you're starving them out. That has been a tactic in warfare for a very long time, sieges and things like that. You may seem like you got a lot now, but after a few years or even a few months, most people will be screaming to the governments to say, hey, you know, you need to do whatever it takes. We're starving here. So, and that's kind of what we see happening. That's why it's important that you learn how to grow your own foods. We do a lot of that on this channel. If you look at our playlist, whenever you're looking at things long term on your food, make sure you're buying heirloom seeds and things like that. That's going to have a really good turnover rate as far as you can pull the seeds from the vegetables and fruits you're growing and grow them next year as well. So that's something that you really need to make sure that you do when you're doing your sustainability program. Whenever it comes to food, we're already seeing the supplies go down. We're seeing the cost come up. Now, we do get some comments from people saying they're not seeing food shortages in their area of America. And if that's true, man, that's great. You should use that as an opportunity to get prepared, because it is coming. It is not going to be something that's not going to affect anyone in this country. Is going to affect everyone. Already we're seeing people that are of the super rich. They're like trying to put a lot of these condos and secondary houses and stuff that they have. They're trying to sell that stuff off for a reason. And from what the experts that were on the article I was reading were saying, is because of the interest rates and stuff like that that's coming up. So Could you buy some of that stuff at a lower price? Sure, but if you're going to have to make payments, you're going to be paying more in the long run. But we're watching the rich are preparing. They're starting to hold on to cash, where a lot of them were actually real frivolous with the spending at one time. But they're really watching what's happening, and there's a lot of them that are actually concerned because they've overextended themselves in their investments and things, which should be turning over. You know, an investment can take 10, 20, 30 years to turn over, but if it's a bad investment, you can actually go broke. And a lot of them are trying to dump these properties, according to the articles that we're reading. All you have to do, guys, is get on Google, get on DuckDuckGo. There are search engines. You can type in what's happening, and you're going to find these articles. I'm not going to spend an hour trying to post every article I read, because I read hundreds of articles during a week time to get you the most up-to-date information that I can get you. And on top of that, I'm also out trying to grow my own gardens. I'm tending phlox and things like that as well, because I have a sustainability program for me and mine. So I'm not going to come in and try to take all my time to just focus on a YouTube channel, which is just an outlet to be able to let people know what we're seeing and what we're reading here. So I think it's important that we as a community, we realize, okay, maybe there's certain areas that right now are not struggling as hard. They still have some food. They still have the availability of certain things, and they need to be stocking up on that stuff now, because down here where I'm at, the availability as far as the selection is nowhere near what it was a year ago, or especially 2 or 3 years ago. You're getting down to where your canned goods are basically, you're limited to about 3 things, which would be some type of a bean, some type of green beans, and then corn. That is what we see on the shelves when we can see it on the shelves. Even things such as soups, condensed soups and stuff like that, we're starting to see where there's not as much as that out here. When you start talking about consommes and stuff like that, which are basically flavorings that you would make stews and stuff with, that's actually dwindling down as well. People are getting that type of stuff that they want, and they put it back. And you may be thinking, well, yeah, but the meat is not really available. Well, there's deer, there's squirrel, there's all kinds of meat sources you can have, chicken, quail, stuff like that. And people are gathering the supplies they need to be able to eat the stuff they want to eat as far as the flavoring that they like to have with it. But they're starting to grow their own food, especially in this area. So there's actually quite a few houses around here I've noticed are starting to get chickens now. There's one other person up the road that is getting quail going now. So that's pretty cool to see that happening. People are starting to wake up. And when you get to talk to these people, like, man, you know, I'm tired of paying $4 or $5 for a dozen of eggs. That's insane. For a dozen of eggs, it is just insane when you can grow that stuff right here. Now, if you're like me and you're eating 4 eggs a day, that is between 2 people, 2 eggs a piece in the morning for breakfast, and then we throw our grits and our ground sausage and stuff in there. That adds up. You're going to be saving quite a bit of money in raising your own chickens that way. Plus, you're going to have that meat source. And if you're able to keep a rooster, then you're going to have a consistent source of meat that you can continue to breed. So I would recommend, if you're not in an area where you can keep flocks, it's time to start thinking about relocating to something a little bit different, maybe something a little more affordable. I know everybody likes to have their, you know, $350,000 to $500,000 homes, but the problem is, if you're making payments on that stuff now, you're going to eventually lose that, especially if you're in these communities where you have HOAs and you're not allowed to keep or grow your own gardens, which is some of the areas down here in Florida, you cannot even grow gardens in HOAs. So that's something you need to worry about. Now, what is an HOA? That is a homeowners association. Those things are usually voted on in meetings. So that's something that if you are in a HOA, you need to be mentioning to them, say, hey, I would like to keep a garden. We need to put it to a vote to be able to keep a garden, and get those things voted back in if you can. Now, if you come out and you say, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do anyway, you're going to see fines and things like that, and there can be liens put against your property, and it's going to cause you a lot of issues. That's why I say I will never, I lived in a subdivision before with HOAs. I will never do that again, because when it comes to gardening, or if you want to keep some flocks, it was out of the question, guys. So that's something you need to be aware of. We're seeing the empty shelves everywhere. I think a lot of people are reporting that in now, especially down in this area of Florida. Apparently there's an Aldi's, I think is how you pronounce that, that's going to be opening up down here, some kind of a food store. I don't know anything about that store. I've never even heard of it. One of our commenters had mentioned it. So be interesting to see what kind of stuff they get, if they have a lot of fresh produce, or, you know, what the availability is. And they may actually have a different type of supplier that has more food, and maybe that's the stores that people are talking about. Either way, if the pricing is right and stuff, that's going to be a good source to be able to stockpile our food in this area, guys. So again, I hope everyone has a great day. I'm going to get off here. I'm getting the hiccup. Sorry about that. But we'll talk to everyone later.